The morning sun rose slowly over the base, shining on metal rooftops and rows of sleeping barracks. Soldiers were already awake, running in formation, shouting commands. The usual noise of a regular day, but something was different today. A new face had arrived. She stood near the gate with her backpack, boots polished, hair tied tight, and eyes calm. Her name was Sergeant Alina Reyes, and no one knew much about her. She had been transferred quietly, with no welcome speech, no grand story, just a file and a name. Another desk soldier, someone muttered as she walked past. She didn't look tough, she wasn't tall or loud. She didn't wear the usual confidence that new soldiers carried. She looked like someone who would file reports and make coffee, not charge into combat. At morning PT, the unit gathered for their daily run. The drill sergeant shouted names, gave orders, and the soldiers lined up. Alina stood at the end of the row, holding a folded paper. When her name was called, she stepped forward and handed over the paper. "What's this?" the sergeant asked, frowning at the paper. "Medical exemption, sir," Alina said softly. The sergeant raised an eyebrow. "What's the reason?" Alina didn't say much, just pointed to the bottom line. "Surgery scar. Lower spine." The sergeant looked annoyed but nodded. She was allowed to sit out while the rest of the unit began running laps. As they passed her again and again, some soldiers smirked. Others whispered jokes under their breath. "Look at her, already skipping runs," one laughed. "She's probably here on Daddy's connections," said another. "She's soft, she won't last a week," a third one muttered. Alina heard it all, but she said nothing. She sat on the bench, her back straight, her eyes focused on the running track. Her face gave away no emotion, just calm and quiet breathing. Later in the day, in the barracks, more whispers followed her. Some soldiers joked that she was pretending. Others rolled their eyes when she walked by. A few of them watched her closely, looking for some reaction, but she never gave them one. She moved like a shadow, completing her tasks, checking her locker, organizing her gear. She was quiet, respectful, but never weak. Her movements were smooth, precise, like someone who knew discipline deeper than most, but no one noticed that. They only saw what they wanted to see. A small woman with a PT excuse. One evening after lights out, two soldiers were joking in their bunks, laughing softly. "Maybe she heard her back lifting office chairs," one said. "Or maybe she's a spy from the kitchen staff," the other joked. Just then a third soldier, Jenkins, turned from his bunk. He had seen something earlier during laundry, something strange, a tattoo, half hidden beneath Alina's collar when she bent down to pick up a towel. It was not the usual kind, it was a black snake curled around a triangle. Not a design from any regular unit. He didn't say much at the time, but it stayed in his mind. It looked official, dangerous even, like it meant something that wasn't supposed to be talked about, but who would believe him? She was just the new girl in boots with a medical excuse, right? The next morning the PT run began again, and once more, Alina sat on the bench. Her file said she needed recovery time, that she wasn't cleared for impact exercises yet. The others ran, shouted, sweated, while she remained calm and quiet. But Jenkins kept looking at her, wondering who she really was, because deep down, something felt wrong, or maybe right in a strange way. She wasn't just quiet, she was watching, listening, calculating, like someone trained to notice everything, even when people weren't looking, like someone who had lived through things they couldn't talk about. The truth was, Alina Reyes wasn't hiding from PT. She wasn't afraid of running or sweat. She had run farther than any of them, in places where the ground was made of dust and blood, in missions that never made it into the news. She had scars they wouldn't understand and a past they could never survive. But for now she just waited, letting them laugh, letting them talk, letting them think she was nothing special, because soon they would see, and when they did, none of them would ever forget the girl they once mocked. The girl with the snake mark, the new girl in boots. The barracks never stayed quiet for long. Not really. Even after lights out, voices moved like wind through the halls. Whispers, jokes, stories, complaints, and laughter. It was the heartbeat of the base, restless and curious. But since Sergeant Alina Reyes arrived, the whispers had changed. They weren't about weekend passes or bad food anymore. They were about her. She wasn't doing anything strange, just her duties. On time, quietly, without mistakes. Maybe that was the strange part. She didn't laugh during mess hall, didn't joke in the showers, didn't join card games in the evening. She was always calm, always polite, always just there. Who is she really? Someone whispered from bunk 9. She says she's admin, said another. But I checked the logs and there's nothing about where she transferred from. Maybe she's a paper soldier, a third voice joked. You know, those who only exist in files and coffee rooms. But not everyone was laughing this time. Jenkins, the same one who saw the tattoo, had stopped joking too. He didn't know why, but the more he watched her, the more questions burned in his mind. She wasn't just quiet. She was trained. Her bed was always made perfectly, the corners tucked like a machine. Her locker was arranged like a surgeon's table, clean, sharp balanced, even the way she walked, not too fast, not too slow, always aware of her surroundings. She moved like someone who had nothing to prove and everything to hide. One afternoon, the base held a field lecture on desert operations. It was routine stuff, taught by a young lieutenant reading off slides. Most soldiers yawned through it. Some doodled on notebooks. Others just stared at the clouds. But not Alina. She sat still, watching, listening. And when the lieutenant made a mistake, mixing up a heat casualty protocol, she raised her hand gently and corrected him. Everyone turned. The lieutenant blinked, surprised. Thank you, Sergeant Reyes, he said, awkwardly adjusting his notes after that. Silence filled the training circle. They didn't know how she knew that. It wasn't in the manual. That night, Jenkins approached her while she was cleaning her boots. Hey, he said, almost unsure of himself. That was sharp today, and about the heat casualty stuff. She looked up, gave a polite nod. Field Med Camp 14, she said simply. Jenkins hesitated. Camp 14? Isn't that? He stopped, realizing she wasn't going to explain. He nodded slowly, right. As he walked away, he could feel it again, that strange sense in his gut. Like standing near a live wire you can't see. You don't hear it buzz, but you feel it. The whispers started changing after that. Less mockery, more curiosity. More people started watching her from the corners of their eyes. Some tried to talk to her. She was polite. But distant, she didn't open up, and one night, something strange happened. Private Lewis, the biggest loudmouth in the squad, had left his locker unlocked. Someone stole his protein powder, and again, he exploded in the hallway, shouting, accusing random people. His anger echoed off the walls. Alina walked by without a word, heading toward the latrine. Lewis, still red in the face, pointed at her and yelled, "Maybe she took it. She's always hiding something." The hallway froze. Everyone went silent. Alina stopped, turned slowly, her eyes locked onto Lewis, not angry, not scared, just steady, calm. She stepped closer until she stood just a foot from his face. "If you think I'm hiding something," she said, her voice like glass, "look closer." Then she walked away. No one said a word, not even Lewis after that. The whispers grew quieter but deeper, more careful. Some started searching online, trying to look up her name, but found nothing useful. One soldier swore he found an old photo of a squad from Afghanistan, and one face looked like hers, but it was blurred. He showed it to Jenkins, who stared for a long time, then said, "Could be her." Another claimed he'd overheard a master sergeant in logistics mention her name, and then go completely quiet. "She shouldn't be here," he supposedly said. "Not in a regular unit by the end of the week." Everyone knew one thing for sure. Sergeant Alina Reyes wasn't what she appeared to be. She never told them who she really was, and they didn't dare ask. But the tattoo Jenkins saw, the way she moved, the cold way she stared down Lewis, and it all added up to something. Something none of them were trained to understand. Whispers still moved through the barracks, but now they were softer, more respectful, more afraid, because sometimes the quietest soldier in the room has the loudest story, and her story was just beginning. It was Friday morning when the fog rolled in over the training field. The mist hung low, blurring the lines between the trees and the buildings. The perfect weather for a mock combat drill. The unit had been preparing for this for 2 weeks. An all-day exercise meant to simulate a surprise attack on the base. 2 teams would face off, red team versus blue team, with simulated weapons, stealth missions, and capture zones. It was meant to test speed, teamwork, and tactical decisions. Alina Reyes wasn't even on the list. She wasn't cleared for field training yet. Her name had a red line through it in the command folder. But someone in logistics made a mistake instead of Private Allen. The assignment sheet printed Reyes, and no one noticed until it was too late. "Just observe, Sergeant," said Lieutenant Harmon. "Don't engage and stay back and shadow the squad." Alina gave a small nod. She didn't argue. The others raised eyebrows when she showed up in camo gear. "Face paint ready," they chuckled quietly. Lewis rolled his eyes. Jenkins just watched silently, like he was waiting for something or maybe dreading it. The squad split into their teams and moved into the field. The trees stood still, the mist wrapping around their boots. It felt real, too real. 10 minutes into the drill, chaos started. The blue team had set up an ambush in a dried-out creek bed. They thought they were smart, that they had the red team in a trap. But Alina saw it. She crouched behind a fallen log, studying the tracks, the broken leaves, the faint movement ahead. Her team didn't notice it. They were walking straight into the ambush. She whispered one word. "Wait." No one listened. The young corporal in charge waved her off, and then it happened. Shots, blanks, loud and sharp, echoed through the woods. Paint pellets flew one by one. Her teammates dropped, marked with blue hits out of instinct. Alina dropped flat to the dirt, rolled behind a tree, and disappeared into the fog. Then something changed. She didn't freeze, she didn't panic. She moved fast and silent, like she had done this before. Not in games, but in life and death. One blue team soldier came too close, creeping around a tree expecting easy targets. Alina struck from behind, taking his weapon and tagging him out with his own gear before he even turned around. Another one followed the noise. He didn't see her up in the branches. She dropped down, took him down, and vanished again. Within 6 minutes, the entire blue team was out, all tagged. Stunned and wide-eyed, Lieutenant Harmon, watching from the control tent with binoculars, nearly dropped them in shock. "What just happened?" he muttered. "Who cleared her for field ops?" The field radio crackled and the referee called the drill. Red team victory on total wipeout, time 14 minutes. When the squad returned, covered in paint and confusion, the camp was buzzing. Soldiers clapped Jenkins on the back, thinking he had led the ambush, but Jenkins shook his head slowly. "That wasn't me," he said quietly. "That was her." All eyes turned to Alina, who walked back toward the barracks without a word. Calm as ever, her uniform was barely dirty. Her steps light, not proud, just practiced. Someone had recorded the final moments on their helmet cam. They posted it in a private unit group chat titled, "Who is she?" Within the hour, everyone on base had seen the clip. The way she moved, the way she struck like a shadow. The comments were flooding in. Where did she learn that? Is that Krav Maga or some ninja thing? Bro, she vanished into the mist. But then something serious happened. Master Sergeant O'Malley, an old war dog from Special Forces, walked into the comms room, saw the video and froze. His face lost color. He reached over, deleted the clip from the network without saying a word, and ordered everyone in the room to shut their mouths. No jokes, no questions, just silence. Outside, Alina sat alone under the shade of the water tower, wiping paint off her gloves. She wasn't smiling, she wasn't proud. It was just another day, another drill, another secret almost uncovered, but Jenkins approached her again, this time with a strange respect in his voice. "You trained for this before," he said, not asking, just saying what everyone now believed. Alina looked up, her eyes met his, and for a brief second, something sharp flashed through them. Pain. Memory. "Wait, I trained," she said softly, "in places that don't have names." Jenkins nodded slowly and walked away. That night the barracks didn't whisper so loudly. The jokes were fewer, the laughter quieter. They had seen something real, something they didn't understand. And in the heart of the base, one name began to mean something very different. Reyes, not the girl who skipped PT, but the one who ended a whole team before they could blink. The mistake they made was thinking it was just a game. But for her, it never had been. The base had not been this quiet in years. Soldiers were talking in low voices, avoiding eye contact. The clip from the mock drill was gone, deleted from every device, but the memory stayed, and so did the questions. No one knew how Sergeant Alina Reyes had done what she did. The whole blue team taken down in minutes like a ghost had moved through the trees. It was too clean, too fast, too real. By Monday morning, word had reached the colonel. Colonel Raymond was a man who had seen decades of service. A soldier who didn't scare easily. He dealt with rogue agents, classified units, even shadow operations overseas, but when he read Alina's file, something about it didn't add up. Her file was too clean, too short, too ordinary. No awards, no citations, no combat record, just admin work and logistics. It looked like someone had wiped her history clean. He called her name into his office at 900 hours. Sergeant Alina Reyes, he said, his voice low but firm. Report immediately. The moment she entered the office, the air seemed to change. She stood at attention, calm, unreadable. Her eyes didn't wander, her hands didn't shake. Sit down, the colonel said. Watching her closely, she sat, back straight. Hands resting on her knees. I've seen the footage, he said slowly. You weren't supposed to be part of that exercise. Yes, sir, she replied. It was a mistake in the assignment list. And yet, the colonel continued, you finished an entire opposing team in less than 15 minutes. Silence. Where did you learn that level of tactical engagement, Sergeant? He asked. Alina looked straight ahead. Standard field training. Sir, the colonel leaned forward. Don't lie to me. Sergeant, her eyes flickered for a second, something cold passing through them. Permission to speak freely, sir. Granted, with respect, Colonel, she said quietly. Sometimes training isn't about where you learn, but what you survive. The colonel's jaw tightened. He recognized the tone. Not arrogance, not defiance, but truth. The kind that came from someone who had seen too much. He stood and walked to the window, sunlight cutting across the blinds. His hand rested on a file on his desk, her file, the one that had more blacked out lines than words. Sergeant, he said finally, where were you stationed before this base? Overseas, she said. Where exactly? Classified, sir. He turned slowly. Classified? You're a logistics NCO, she didn't reply. Then something caught his eye, and she adjusted her sleeve. The edge of a tattoo showed for a moment, a dark coil of ink against her skin, shaped like a snake wrapped around a dagger. The colonel froze, his voice dropped, low and sharp. Show me your arm, Sergeant, she hesitated, then rolled up her sleeve, revealing the full mark, a black snake coiled around a dagger, its tail forming the shape of a looped infinity sign at the bottom, faint but clear. Was a code SO13. For a long time no one spoke. The colonel stepped back, his face pale. That mark, he whispered. That unit was disbanded 12 years ago. Officially, yes, Alina said quietly. Unofficially, some of us were reassigned. He sank into his chair. The memory of those old missions came rushing back. The snake mark, it wasn't just a tattoo, it was a symbol, worn only by the most secret branch of black operations. A unit so deep in the system that even generals didn't have clearance to read their reports. The ones who went where others couldn't and did what others wouldn't. You were part of that, he said in disbelief. I was trained by them, she replied softly. After my family was killed overseas, I was chosen. The colonel rubbed his forehead. My God. He looked at her again, but now, not as a regular soldier, not even as a woman, but as someone who carried a history the rest of them could never imagine. Why are you here? He asked finally, his voice lower now. Why hide in a base like this? Alina smiled faintly. Because, sir, after too many ghosts. Sometimes you just want a quiet post and a sunrise. The colonel exhaled, the tension in the room shifting. He sat in silence for a while, staring at the file. Then at her tattoo. Finally, he said, I'll remove your name from all public records of this incident. You'll continue your duties as normal. No one else needs to know. Yes, sir. As she stood to leave, the colonel spoke again, softer this time. Sergeant, she turned. For what it's worth, he said. The last time I saw that mark, it was on a coffin. Alina paused, her eyes flickering with a quiet sadness. Then she gave a short nod. That's where they said I was too. "Sir," and then she walked out, leaving him alone in the room, staring at the empty space she had just occupied. For the rest of the day, the colonel didn't speak to anyone. He just sat at his desk, staring at the black snake drawn faintly in his memory. Outside, life went on. Drills, paperwork, laughter. But in the corners of the base, whispers began again. Softer this time, with a tone of fear and respect mixed together. Because when the colonel went pale that morning, everyone noticed. They didn't know why. But they knew one thing for sure. Sergeant Alina Reyes wasn't just another soldier. She was something else. Something that carried silence like a weapon, and secrets like scars. And the snake mark. That wasn't just a tattoo, it was a warning. Colonel Raymond didn't sleep much that night. He sat in his office long after the lights went out across the base. The usual comfort of routine, reports, drills, noise, had been replaced by a silence that pressed against the walls like fog. He couldn't stop thinking about that mark. So 13, the black snake, the dagger, the looped tail. He remembered it from his younger days, from classified missions, sealed files, whispered names at war tables. That mark belonged to soldiers who were sent in when diplomacy failed. When diplomacy died, they were not listed in regular military logs. They didn't get medals. They didn't get funerals. They got erased. He opened the military personnel database, typing slowly, carefully. Alina Reyes, a single file appeared. It looked clean, too clean. Administrative role. Transferred from Logistics Command in Fort Branton. No previous combat deployments listed. No special training programs. No red flags, no commendations. It was a ghost file. A paper body with no blood in it. He scrolled down. Clicked on attached documents. Most of them were blocked, marked with black bars. Some had labels like restricted by Intelcom 9A. Others simply read access denied. He tried his override code. It blinked red, access refused. Colonel Raymond wasn't just frustrated, he was afraid. How could a low-ranking sergeant be walking around his base with a background no one could access? Who placed her here and why? He reached for the phone and called an old contact. Someone from the days before desks and computers. A man named Hale, now retired, but still tied to the shadows when Hale picked up. His voice was gravel, aged but sharp. "You only call when it matters." "I have someone on my base," Raymond said. "Says her name is Alina Reyes." There was a pause on the other end. Then Hale spoke slowly. "Describe her." Raymond gave a rough description, ending with, "She has the mark. You saw the tattoo?" Hale asked, "Yes, clear and complete?" "Yes." Silence stretched. Then Hale whispered, "You weren't supposed to." "What do you mean?" Raymond asked. "You weren't supposed to see her," Hale replied. "No one is." Raymond leaned back, feeling a weight settle in his chest. "So she's one of yours?" "Not anymore," Hale said. "She walked away 3 years ago." "That's not in her file." "Because her file doesn't exist," Hale answered. "Not to you, not to anyone," Raymond swallowed. "Why is she here?" "I don't know," Hale said honestly. "She disappeared after Karachi. We thought she was dead. She was listed KIA in a bombing." "She's very much alive," the colonel replied. Hale sighed. "Then don't ask questions. Don't poke further. If she's walking around in a standard base, someone high up wants her hidden in plain sight." "But my men, they're scared, confused," Raymond said. "She took down a team in a mock drill like it was a real op." "She's not your problem," Hale said. "She's a survivor of something none of you are trained to understand." Before hanging up, Hale gave one final warning. "If she's quiet, let her be quiet. If she starts running, don't follow." The line went dead. Colonel Raymond stared at the phone, then at the dark window. His reflection looked older than it had that morning. He now knew 2 things. First, Alina Reyes was more dangerous than anyone on his base. Second, she had chosen silence, and silence from people like her was never accidental. Meanwhile, in the barracks, Alina sat on her bunk, polishing her boots with slow, steady movements. She didn't speak. She didn't react to the looks, the stares. Some soldiers had stopped talking when she walked by. Others nodded at her with respect now. A few avoided her altogether. Jenkins, who once doubted her, now watched from a distance, not with suspicion, but with something close to awe. He had seen the footage. He had seen how fast she moved, how cold and calm her eyes were in the middle of chaos, and he had seen how the officers went quiet when her name was mentioned. That night he crept into the records room, used a friend's login and searched her name. What he found shocked him, not because there was too much, but because there was almost nothing. Just a transfer paper, a short one-page summary, and a redacted block of digital ink. It was like someone had built a wall around her past, and no matter how hard he looked, that wall didn't crack. Back in the colonel's office, Raymond opened a drawer, pulled out an old folder from his private collection, a file marked Project Shadow Unit Eyes Only. Inside was a grainy photograph, a unit standing in front of a burned-out compound, all masked, all armed, all unmarked except one. In the corner, barely visible, was a young woman with the same quiet eyes. Same face, same stance, Alina Reyes. He stared at the photo for a long time before sliding it back into the folder. There were files no one was supposed to open, and there were people like her, who were never meant to be found again. The bass was still loud, drills continued, boots thudded against the ground. Radios cracked with static, but something had changed beneath the noise. It was her, Sergeant Alina Reyes. No one mocked her anymore. No one asked questions. No one made jokes about her PT excuse or her quiet behavior. They said nothing now, not because they knew her story, but because they didn't, and sometimes, not knowing was more powerful. She moved through the base like before, calm, quiet, focused, but now, when she walked into a room, conversations paused. Soldiers stood straighter. Mess hall tables cleared space, not because she asked, but because they felt they should. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was something else, something deeper, like standing near an old monument in a forgotten forest. You didn't know its history, but you could feel it had one night in the mess hall. Jenkins sat across from Private Ross. Both had gone silent as soon as Alina entered and sat with her tray 2 tables away. "She hasn't said more than 10 words all week," Ross whispered. "Would you?" Jenkins replied, "If your life was made of shadows?" Ross nodded slowly, then asked, "Did she really take out a whole team by herself?" "I saw it," Jenkins said. "I was on that team," Ross stared. "And she didn't even get winded?" Didn't even blink. They both looked at her. Alina sat alone, eating calmly, her tray perfectly arranged, not a single motion wasted. Her eyes scanned the room slowly, not nervously. Just with quiet awareness, suddenly a new recruit entered the mess hall. Loud, cheerful, slapping backs and tossing jokes. He was fresh from another base. Hadn't heard the whispers yet. He noticed Alina and smirked. Walking up to her table, "Mind if I sit?" he asked with a cocky grin. She didn't look up. She simply said, "I prefer silence." The recruit laughed. "That's cold." "Sarge." Then she looked up. Just one glance, brief but heavy. Something in her eyes made him stop mid-laugh. The grin faded and his voice cracked as he said, "No problem, I'll catch a spot elsewhere." He backed away, quietly finding another table. Everyone saw it, but no one spoke because by now, they understood something important. You didn't cross people like her. Not out of fear, but out of respect. That evening, Jenkins found himself posted on night watch duty. As the wind swept across the field, he spotted Alina walking alone near the wire fence. He hesitated, then walked toward her. "You always walk this late?" he asked. "Only when I can't sleep," she replied without stopping. "What keeps you up?" he asked gently. She paused, then said, "Old names?" Jenkins didn't ask what she meant. He knew better. They walked in silence for a moment. Then he said, "You know, the colonel went pale when he saw your mark." "I know," she said. "He called someone," Jenkins added, "after that. Your file got locked tighter." "I didn't ask for that," Alina said softly. "I just wanted to disappear quietly." "You didn't," Jenkins said. "Now people talk, but not like before." She stopped near the fence, her hands gripping the cold metal. "Do they still whisper?" she asked. "Not like they used to," he said. "Now they just wonder how someone like you ended up here." Alina looked at the stars, her face unreadable. "I chose this place," she said. "After what I left behind, this is peace." Jenkins nodded, then asked the question no one dared. "Was it really Black Ops?" She didn't answer, but her silence said everything. After a long pause, she finally said, "We did what others couldn't, and when we were done, they buried us under blank pages." Jenkins swallowed hard. "And now? Now I serve quietly," she said. "No medals, no stories, just peace." That night, Jenkins didn't sleep well. His mind kept returning to her words, and to the weight behind them. The next morning something strange happened. A supply sergeant accidentally dropped a heavy crate near the motor pool. It landed hard and trapped a recruit's arm under it. People panicked, shouting for help. Before anyone moved, Alina was already there. She gripped the edge of the crate and lifted, not with panic, but with cold precision. She gave clear instructions, told others where to place support rods, how to stabilize the injury, and how to call it in fast. Within minutes, the situation was under control. The recruit, barely 19, looked up at her with tears in his eyes. "You saved me," he said. Alina just nodded and walked away. That day, no one said a word against her. Not even behind closed doors, because now they knew. She wasn't just trained, she was shaped by things they would never face. Around her, you didn't need to shout to be powerful. Sometimes you just needed to survive. And Alina Reyes, she had survived more than most could imagine. So now they said nothing because she had earned that silence. The sky was gray that morning, clouds heavy with the promise of rain. The base moved as usual, drills, routines, reports, but the air felt different. Like something was coming at 1100 hours. A black SUV rolled through the gate. It wasn't military, no markings, no plates, just clean and quiet. The guards checked IDs and waved it through without asking questions. Inside the vehicle were two men, both wearing dark suits and sunglasses. They didn't speak as they passed the barracks. Didn't look around, they already knew where they were going. Colonel Raymond stood waiting outside his office, his jaw tight. His message from the night before had been brief. "We're coming. Don't interfere." The SUV parked without a sound. The doors opened, and the two men stepped out. They didn't salute, didn't introduce themselves. One handed the colonel a small black envelope. "Sealed with red wax, she'll understand," the man said. "Does she have a choice?" the colonel asked. The other man smiled faintly. "She always has a choice, but not always the time." Without another word, they walked past him into the building, heading straight to the hallway where Alina's quarters were located. Word traveled fast on a base. Soldiers peeked through windows, whispered in corners. Jenkins heard the SUV before he even saw it. He watched from the armory as the men moved like shadows through the hallway. He didn't try to follow inside her room. Alina was sitting cross-legged on her bunk, cleaning the strap of her field pack. She didn't look surprised when the knock came. When the door opened, she looked up slowly. Her eyes met theirs, calm, sharp, distant. They didn't greet her, didn't sit. One of them placed the black envelope on the edge of her bunk. "It's time," he said simply. Alina didn't move right away. She stared at the envelope for a long moment, then finally reached out, breaking the wax seal with her thumb. Inside was a small photo, grainy and dark. A man's face, scarred, aged but familiar. Beneath the photo was a single sentence written in code, one she hadn't seen in years but still remembered. "The black sun rises in the north." Her fingers tightened on the paper. Her voice, when it came, was a whisper. "He's alive." "Not for long," one of the men replied. "Unless we move." Alina stood slowly. She walked to her locker, opened it, and reached past the surface gear. Behind the false panel, she pulled out a sealed pouch. Her old credentials, black card, red edge, no name, no rank. She didn't ask for transport, didn't ask what the mission was. She already knew as she packed silently. The men stepped back, giving her space respectfully. Colonel Raymond stood at the entrance to the hallway, watching. "She's leaving?" he asked as the men returned. "Yes," one replied. "She's needed again." The colonel nodded. "Will she return?" The man adjusted his sleeve. "That depends on the outcome." Inside the barracks, Jenkins stood near the stairs as Alina walked down with her gear. He stepped aside, unsure if he should say something, but Alina stopped, looked at him and said softly, "Thank you for not being afraid to see me." "I wasn't," Jenkins replied. "I was just afraid I didn't know how to see you." Alina gave him the faintest smile. "That's enough." Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small patch. A black snake wrapped around a dagger, the same one on her arm. She placed it on the bulletin board near the squad room door, pinned with a single thumbtack. No words, no explanation. Then she turned and walked away. The SUV pulled out of the base minutes later, leaving behind nothing but dust and silence. That evening, soldiers gathered around the bulletin board, staring at the snake patch. Some were silent, others whispered, but no one dared remove it. Colonel Raymond stood by his window as the sun began to set. His reflection flickered in the glass. A man carrying orders he didn't give. "She's not just a soldier," he muttered to himself. "She's a message, and across the base." The feeling settled, like something important had just left. Someone who didn't fit in files or folders. Someone who didn't need to speak to be remembered. Someone they would probably never see again. Unless the world broke open again and the black sun rose in the north. The base returned to normal, or at least, it tried to. PT drills resumed, orders were shouted. Boots slammed the ground in rhythm again. But there was a different sound beneath it all now, not noise. Not silence, but memory. The black SUV had vanished as quickly as it came. No one knew where it went, no one dared ask. And Alina Reyes, and she was gone. Her bunk was empty, her locker cleared. Her name quietly removed from the duty roster. Not reassigned, not discharged, just erased. But her presence was not. The snake patch still hung on the squad bulletin board, untouched. Even when the sergeant tried to remove it once, Jenkins stepped forward and said, "Leave it." The others agreed. They couldn't explain why. But it felt wrong to take it down every morning. Someone looked at that patch before heading out. It became a ritual. A small glance, a quiet nod, a symbol. Not just of who she was, but what she meant. Stories began to take shape, each one slightly different. Some said she was part of a unit so secret, even the president had to ask twice. Others claimed she had once gone dark behind enemy lines for 7 months. Returning with classified intel no one believed was possible. A few whispered that she had been declared dead, and had come back anyway. But no one knew the truth, and somehow that made her more real. Her name wasn't shouted, wasn't written on plaques. But it lived in the quiet spaces during training. When someone moved too slow or hesitated, a sergeant would say, "You think Reyes would have paused?" When a medic responded fast during an emergency, they'd say, "Almost as quick as Reyes." When someone broke under pressure, Jenkins would whisper, "She carried worse in silence." Her story became more than just a memory. It became a warning, a guide, a ghost. Colonel Raymond kept her file locked in his private cabinet. Not because he was ordered to, but because he wanted to. He would open it sometimes. Not to read, but to remember. One evening, while walking past the fence line, he found something wedged under the bench where she used to sit. A folded piece of black cloth, her old field patch. Worn thin, no note, no explanation, just the patch. He held it for a long time, then placed it in his top desk drawer beside his retirement medal. He never told anyone. Jenkins, meanwhile, had changed too. He no longer joked as much, no longer spoke before thinking. When asked why, he would simply say, "Some people teach with words. Some teach with silence," and those who knew, really knew, would nod. One night, a new recruit asked Jenkins during fire watch, "Do you think she'll come back?" Jenkins didn't answer right away. He looked up at the stars, then said quietly, "Not unless the world needs her." The recruit frowned. Why would someone like her ever come to a place like this? Jenkins smiled sadly. Because she wanted peace, and maybe she thought she could find it here. The recruit nodded slowly, not fully understanding. But feeling something in those words, a few months later, the base received a sealed envelope with no return address. Inside was a single medal, the Distinguished Service Cross. No name engraved, no paperwork, just the medal wrapped in old cloth. Colonel Raymond placed it in a display case at the center of the squad hall. No label, no frame, no explanation. When someone asked what it was for, he replied, "It's not about the medal. It's about the silence it came with," and in that silence, her name still lived, not on paper, not in reports, but in the way people moved, in the way they listened more, spoke less, respected deeper. She had stayed only for a short time, but her echo remained long after. And though no one dared speak it loudly, her name floated quietly in the corners of every room. Reyes, the girl with the snake mark, the one who didn't brag, didn't explain, didn't break, the one who once walked among them, with the weight of a forgotten war on her shoulders, and the calm of someone who had already faced death, the one they all laughed at once, and then never dared laugh at again, not because she demanded fear, but because she had earned respect, the kind that didn't need noise to be remembered. So now they whisper, not out of fear but out of honor,